Hungary has become a strategic player as Europe struggles to deal with the war in Ukraine. It has refused to join NATO and Western allies in supporting Ukraine's battle with Russia while maintaining solid relations with Moscow. I sat down with Hungary's Foreign Minister, Peter Szijjarto, to talk about the impact of Europe's largest military crisis since World War II. I'm Frank Szijjarto, and this is TRT World One-on-One. Hungary's Foreign Minister Peter Szijjarto, thank you for joining us here on TRT World.
Thank you very much for the possibility again.
I want to start out by asking you about some of the concerns that are shared between Turkey and Hungary. Ankara and Budapest have a similar stance when it comes to the war in Ukraine, but it appears that the recent U.S. arms deal to send more weapons to Ukraine is going to really make this war go on longer. What are your thoughts about that?
Look, we are a neighboring country to Ukraine. That's why the impacts of the war are immediate and very severe on us. We have received 1 million refugees so far. Our energy prices are skyrocketing. Imagine last year we had to pay 7 billion euros for importing energy. This year we have to pay 19 billion. And if everything goes along the forecast, next year we have to pay 29 billion. Instead of 7 billion euros, 29 billion euros within 2 years. That's the increase. That's huge. And being in the neighborhood of a war, that's definitely dangerous. Dangerous. Because if there's an escalation, then escalation takes place in the neighborhood for the first time. So that's why we are super interested in peace. That's why we are advocating for peace. That's why we are using the peace rhetoric. And I have to tell you that we really regret that this kind of approach towards making peace soon is absolutely not out there, neither in the international political discourse nor in the European one. Imagine last time we had this issue on the agenda on the meeting of the EU foreign ministers. I was the last one to speak, 27th. During the first 26th intervention, the word peace was not even mentioned. Was not even mentioned. So for us, all decisions, all measures, all actions which head towards prolongation or escalation of the war is a security threat on our country. So from here, from the United States, an ocean away, as a nuclear superpower, it might seem differently. But we ask everyone not to do measures to escalate on our expense. Because we have already paid a very serious price of the war in the neighborhood, and we don't want to pay more for that. We don't want to pay an even higher price, because we Hungarians are not responsible for the war. Hungarian people are not responsible. Hungarian corporates are not responsible. So why should they pay an even higher price for a war for which they are absolutely have no responsibility for?
I want to get back to what you were mentioning about refugees. Tell us more about the human impact on the people in your country with the refugees flowing across the border.
I mean, first of all, it's terrible to see. Terrible to see those families arriving torn apart. Because, you know, there are conscription rules, mobilization rules in Ukraine in place, which means that the fathers, most of the fathers, basically cannot accompany the families. So what we see are torn apart families, mothers with children, and sometimes the grandparents. And it's really heartbreaking to see. So that's why we made the decision that, that the refugees enjoy equal access both to education and to healthcare, similar to the Hungarian citizens. The refugee kids and students are being enrolled in more than 1,200 Hungarian kindergartens and schools. For those who stay, we offer a job. We give cash incentive to the employers, to the companies, to employ refugees. Because for them, feeling useful, going to work every day, that helps to give back a bit of dignity, at least, you know. So, but the Hungarian people are united to help the refugees. We allow everybody to come in. And for those who would like to continue their journey somewhere, we give the assistance. And for them who would like to stay, we give them the full access to education and healthcare, of course.
In terms of energy impact of the war, man, Hungary has been dependent on Russian oil and gas for some time now. And how does the infrastructure of energy within Europe affect where you get your gas and oil?
Look, when it comes to the energy supply, we have to make it very clear that this is neither a political nor an ideological issue. It's a physical issue. So heating with political statements or heating with ideology is impossible. You need gas for that. And in order to get gas, you need a resource, a source, and you need a delivery route, a pipeline. If you don't have one of these two, then it's just a philosophical question, right? So physically speaking, because of the infrastructural determination, Hungary is not able to supply itself, excluding the Russian, in case the Russian sources are excluded. To the contrary, the only safe and 100% operational gas pipeline, east to west, in Europe currently is the Turkish Stream, the pipeline which delivers the Russian gas through Turkey, Bulgaria, and Serbia to Hungary. You know, when we built this pipeline together with Turkish, Bulgarian, and Serbian friends, we were under very heavy attacks from our Western friends, partners, and allies, even threatening us with sanctions.
Why?
Because they didn't want another infrastructure which does not go through Ukraine. But you know, when we care about our national interest, then it doesn't have a Russian aspect, it doesn't have a Ukrainian aspect. We don't build a pipeline this way because it doesn't cross Ukraine. We build it this way because this is our national security interest. And whenever we make a decision, we don't care what the Russians think, what the Ukrainians think. We cannot look at our own decisions with Russian eyes or Ukrainian eyes because we are Hungarians. Hungary first. Hungarian interest matters for us the most. I think it's obvious and it's kind of natural, should be natural. At least. So when it comes to the energy sources, physically it's impossible to exclude the Russian sources now. And you know what I'm telling you is that this winter might be manageable by most of the European countries, but not because they are so, let's say, fantastically managing this issue. This is because the industry consumes much less gas than before. So it's bad news basically because this means recession. But because of this lower demand for gas, countries might manage. The question will be next year. Why? Because at the end of the heating season, the level of fillingness of the storages will go down to 20%. And how you will return to 90%, that's going to be a tough job. Why? Because last year, when we went up from 20 to 90, then the Russian gas was in the mix. And 40% of the European consumption was covered by Russian gas. But now it's excluded. So my question is, with what we're going to replace that? So it's going to be a tough question next year.
Yeah, well, you know, that reminds me, you were quoted as saying that the punitive measures against Russia have beyond doubt hurt Europe much more than Russia.
Yeah, that's right. That's right. I mean, you know, it's again mathematics. So I understand that to a certain extent, political statements, ideological decisions can cover the truth. But at the end of the day, everything's going to go down to numbers, physics and mathematics. And the question is how the European economy looks like now. And the European economy is suffering. Everyone knows. I mean, jobs are at stake, jobs are at risk, companies are about to go bankrupt because of the extremely high energy costs. And what is the reason for this situation? Is the sanction policy. So the sanction policy simply failed. I remember back in February when the war broke out, we sit together and discuss sanctions. And what was the promise or the expectation or forecast by Brussels? That the sanctions will have two impacts. They will put Russian economy on its knees and they will force Russia to put an end to the war. Now we are 8 months after. The war is more brutal than ever. The escalatory danger is more serious than ever. And the European economy is just about to enter a recession phase. So on both promises, the contrary, really the contrary, has been completed.
So you're saying sanctions are not the answer. What is the incentive for Putin to end the war? What can you give him as an incentive to stop the war and, engage in peace talks?
I want to be honest with you. I think it's a naive illusion. It's a naive illusion that talks about peace should take place between Ukraine and Russia. Or to say the other way around, it's an illusion that talks between Russia and Ukraine would lead to peace. Talks between US and Russia, those are necessary. So in case the Americans and the Russians can come to some kind of an agreement, then peace can come in our region. And you know what? I understand protocol is important. I understand it is important in case of a big superpower to show that they are stronger than the other one. I accept all this, but I think it would be very hard to both presidents to explain why they do not meet on the margins of G20. If they are there physically, I hope they will, if they are there physically in one space, why not to meet? It's going to be a hard time for them to explain because there's no legitimate reason not to meet from neither side. I think people are dying on a daily basis. People are fleeing their homes on a daily basis. Economies are suffering. Jobs are at stake. So when, if not now, they should talk to each other and make an agreement to stop this war.
I was about to ask you whether or not you would be at the G20, and because there's the possibility that Vladimir Putin might be there. I want to get back to what's going on in your country in terms of what you're talking about with the sanctions. You know, there are giant billboards in your country with a bomb labeled with the word sanctions, and then there's other words on that billboard that are saying, Brussels sanctions are destroying us. Who put these up and why?
This is the reality. This is the reality. Hungarian economy was doing very well and has been doing very well still. I mean, we will have a growth rate around 6% at the end of the year, so we cannot be disappointed with that. But the high energy prices simply are killing. You know, we will hit a huge export record this year. Huge. But our balance of payment, our foreign balance of payment, will be negative. First time in the last 15 years. It's going to be negative, regardless of the huge export record. Why? Because the energy costs are enormous. And the energy, and the energy costs are the consequences of the sanctions. Similarly to inflation. I mean, double-digit inflation. Totally unnatural. It has no real economic reason. So the sanctions basically have undermined the entire European economy, including the Hungarian one, unfortunately.
Are we likely to see, because the war has dragged on, that the popular support among European nations and the European unity on this will start to wane because they are feeling the pinch of the economies being affected by this, and also the public may be less enthusiastic, as well as maybe some politicians that are becoming, coming into office at this point?
Look, I mean, it's up to the governments how they manage. People will definitely be fed up with this situation in Europe, obviously. I mean, the living standards will decrease, the energy bill is going to increase, the food prices are increasing. Why should people be happy with this situation? So it's up to the governments to manage it. And we have made it very clear in Brussels that we should change. We should change our approach. Because if we don't change our approach, we are killing Europe. And this is not something that should take place.
Your Prime Minister, Viktor Orban, has made comparisons between the Soviet troops that attacked Hungary during the 1956 revolution and the institutions of the European Union. What is his message there?
Look, first of all, we see that that during the crises the European Union had to go through in the last 1.5, 2 decades, it became very obvious that those measures have worked out, which have been made on a national level. And those measures, which were made on a EU level, on Brussels level, they most likely failed or were not successful. So that's why we think that that those attempts which try to take away more competencies from the member states to put it on Brussels level are very dangerous. Because if you look back to the management of migration, to the management of COVID, the economic outcomes of COVID, the economic outcomes of the war, whatever the people in Brussels try to make, those even deepen the problems. And the member states themselves, either alone or on an intergovernmental basis, they could manage these crises. So that's why we don't like this federalistic type of approach which is out there in the European arena, namely creating something which I could describe like a United States of Europe, you know, to put everybody in one integration and get rid of the national heritage, competencies, whatever. We don't like that. We want European Union to be a strong integration of strong member states which are proud about their nationality, their heritage, their culture, their religion, their history.
Now, I understand your National Assembly is poised to ratify, in terms of NATO, two countries that you formerly might have opposed joining it, that being Finland and Sweden. Tell us more about that.
Look, I think it's very important that NATO was able to preserve its unity since the foundation of the alliance. So I think it's important that when there's a decision-making process which at the end requires unanimity, then the concerns of the member states should be taken into consideration seriously, because this helps to maintain and preserve the unity and the integrity of the alliance. So that's why the concerns or the observations of Turkey must be taken into consideration seriously by NATO, because we are speaking one of the members. And if we don't take into consideration the concerns of all of us, then our unity is going to be at stake. In our case, so we'll see how the Parliament can manage its agenda in the upcoming weeks, and we'll see when when the issue of ratification is going to be on the agenda.
So it sounds like you're saying that Turkey's concerns over these two countries being admitted to NATO will be addressed?
Well, what I do hope is that Finland and Sweden can make such kind of decisions or can make such kind of actions or commitments which would satisfy the concerns put forward by Turkey. And you know, it's not because of Turkey or not because of whoever. This is because of Turkey being a NATO member state. And if it is being said that the decision must be made on a methodology of unanimity, then the concerns of all of us must be taken into consideration. This is how it should operate.
Hungary has observer status, I understand, in the Organization of Turkic States, previously known as the Turkic Council. Now, I understand they're going to develop this organization into a full-fledged economic union. So what are your thoughts in terms of the potential here and what challenges they would face? And I ask you this because you're so heavily involved in trade in your role as minister.
Yeah, look, when we came into office back in 2010, then even at that time we understood that a national economy of a country with a size and a location like ours can only be successful if it is being based on two pillars: relationship with the West, relationship with the East, in economic terms. So, I think that was proved during the last year that was the right strategy, because now 70% of investments globally are being financed by Eastern capital. During the last 4 years, it was always a Eastern country, be it Korea or China, to bring the most investments to Hungary. Our trade has grown by 47% in the last 12 years with countries east of us. So for us, the economic and trade cooperation with the Eastern world is very important, because they are creating jobs in Hungary and they are giving opportunity for Hungarian products to be sold. And Turkey has a good chance to become one of the top 10 or 15 economies of the world in the foreseeable future. The Central Asian countries are developing very rapidly, and they offer very good opportunities for Hungarian businesses and Hungarian economic activity, because they are at a stage of development where the technologies we developed can be helpful. So for us, a strong economic cooperation with the countries involved in the organization of the Turkic states is very beneficial. So that's why we joined as an observer. That's why we are active participant. The European headquarters of the organization is located in Budapest.
I want to ask you another question that is somewhat related to trade, and that is on defense. I understand that Hungary has shown a keen interest in acquiring Turkey's new unmanned aerial vehicles, the drones. Tell us more about that.
Unfortunately, recent events in Europe have shown that this is more actual than ever. Now, look, what we hope for is that there will be a game changer in Ukraine, which is called peace. So, you know, for us, the war is too close, I have to tell you, physically and geographically speaking. So for us, peace comes first, and everything just second.
The Black Sea Grain Initiative is due for renewal next month, and there have been noises coming from the Kremlin and also Russia's UN envoys that they're not happy with the deal, and they're seeing holes where they may not renew it on time. What are your thoughts about that?
Well, I hope Turkey will be successful in mediation, because I have to tell you that this grain deal is largely to be thanked for the Turkish colleagues. And I really admire the efforts of your president and my brother Mevlut Çavuşoğlu, who both have put a lot of emphasis in this grain deal. And this is life-saving for many people. And it's, you know, and it can avoid and prevent further security challenges, because in case of shortage of food in certain unstable areas of the world, terrorism can pop up, extremist ideologies can pop up, and then hundreds of thousands of people will flee again, and then another migratory wave will hit Europe. So for us, the grain deal is very important. What we can do there is to help Ukraine to have alternative routes for grain export. We have just inaugurated a huge intermodal railway terminal at the Ukraine-Hungary border on the Hungarian side, capacity of which is double compared to the capacity of the so far biggest intermodal center, which is to be found at the border of Belarus and Poland. So we offer another route as well, through which the grain can be delivered to the North Adriatic ports. But we hope that with the mediation of Turkey, the grain deal will go on.
How would you describe Viktor Orban's relationship with Vladimir Putin?
Look, Russia is a reality. So we have to be in communication with the Russians. And we have always put a lot of efforts of having a relationship on mutual respect and on pragmatic approach. And you know, if we do not talk to the Russians, then we lose the hope, even the hope for peace. That's why the Prime Minister went on a peace mission before the war has broken out, and that's why we are always satisfied when President Macron or Chancellor Scholz talks to the Russian president. And if there's a necessity, if there's a need, if it makes sense, then our Prime Minister talks to the President as well.
In closing, I wanted to ask you, we've been talking so many politics here. Personally, when you look at the Europe you grew up in and you compare it to what's going on now, what are your feelings? What goes through your heart and mind?
Sometimes I really do feel that common sense has totally been lost. I see that all issues are being over-ideologized and over-politicized, and they cannot be addressed on a pragmatic basis. This is the biggest problem, I think. This was the case before the war as well. But now with the war, it's getting worse. So if you try to discuss something on a practical, pragmatic matter, you are immediately called as a breaker of the European unity, a Russian spy, an ally of Putin, whatever. So that takes away the opportunity of rational dialogue in Europe nowadays, which I think is the most serious problem.
Peter Szijjarto, Hungary's foreign minister, thank you for joining us again here on TRT World.
Thank you so much.